Hey, you finally found what you were looking for. As you listen to my voice and feel the gentle frequencies in the background, you'll notice your body beginning to sink deeper into your bed. Each breath slower, each muscle softer, and with every word, your thoughts become quieter. You can let go now. You can rest. This is your journey. Welcome to Dreams of Duty. Now, before we begin this journey, take a moment just to breathe. Breathe in slowly. Feel the air fill your chest and breathe out, letting everything go. Again, breathe in and breathe out. Each time, a little deeper, a little calmer. With every breath, your body softens, your thoughts drift further away, and the world outside becomes distant and quiet. You are safe here. You are calm. You are ready to dream. The night is almost gone. A faint silver hue lingers above the eastern horizon, where the first breath of dawn slides across the fields of Novi Uchkos. The air is cool and heavy with mist, a sea of white that moves slowly between the birches and the damp swamps that stretch for miles. Inside the shallow depression carved into the earth rests a slumbering giant, the KV-1. Its steel surface glistens softly beneath a thin layer of dew and mud. Branches laid across its turret to blend with the sleeping landscape. From a distance, it could be mistaken for a mound of earth, another small hill among many. But inside, 5 men breathe together in the rhythm of waiting. Senior Lieutenant Zinovy Kolobanov sits quietly in the commander's chair, his gloved fingers resting on the cold iron edge of the periscope. He listens to the faint ticking of metal as it cools, to the faraway rumble that hums like a heartbeat of thunder somewhere behind the horizon, to his own slow breathing. He knows the day that awaits him. He has felt it building for weeks, the pressure of the German advance crawling ever deeper into the Russian countryside. This quiet morning, wrapped in mist, is only the calm before the tide. Kolobanov closes his eyes for a moment and allows himself a single thought of home, a White House surrounded by birch trees, his wife laughing softly as she folds linen near the window, the smell of rye bread cooling on the table. For a heartbeat, he is there, far from this damp field, far from the weight of armor and war. Then, as the thought fades, the world outside grows sharper again. Above, a faint drone swells, the sound of aircraft. Through the slits of his periscope, he catches a glimpse of dark silhouettes moving across the pale dawn sky. German Ju-88 bombers, their wings glinting with light as they head north toward Leningrad. The formation passes overhead like a flock of ominous birds, their hum rolling through the earth, rattling the KV's armor plates. None of the men inside react. They watch in silence, their expressions still and composed. The bombers are not their concern. Theirs is a different war, one that waits below the clouds, fought with patience, earth, and steel. Kolobanov speaks softly, his voice steady and low. "Soon," he says. His men nod. They have been here for 2 days, hidden among the wetlands, preparing for a single moment. An ambush, a trap so carefully arranged that even the ground seems complicit. 5 KV-1. Tanks, the pride of Soviet engineering, buried deep along the forest road that snakes toward Marienburg. Each crew knows its range, its arc of fire, its target. Each has sworn to hold until the last shell is spent. The KV-1 is a fortress on treads. Its armor, thick and unyielding. Its 76mm gun, capable of tearing through any German panzer in existence. And yet, for all its power, it hums with quiet grace, a mechanical beast sleeping beneath the soil, waiting for the command to awaken. Kolobanov runs his hand along the interior wall. The steel vibrates faintly beneath his glove, as if sensing his touch. Outside, dawn begins to bloom in shades of gold and amber. Birdsong filters through the narrow slits of the hatch, soft, tentative, unaware of the storm about to unfold. He leans back, closing his eyes again. For a moment, he focuses only on his breathing in and out, slow, rhythmic, like the pulse of the world itself. It is this rhythm, he reminds himself, that must remain unbroken. Not the rhythm of engines or gunfire, but of control, the calm within the storm. Minutes drift by like smoke. The radio crackles softly, then falls silent. No new orders. No movement yet on the road. The crew wait, their thoughts hidden behind calm faces, and beneath it all, a deeper sound begins to rise, a low tremor in the distance, almost too faint to hear at first. Then stronger, heavier, the unmistakable growl of treads grinding against dirt. Kolobanov opens his eyes. His expression remains still, but his voice sharpens. "They're coming!" No one speaks after that. Each man takes his position. The loader checks the shells. The gunner, Usov, wipes his hands and steadies himself at the scope. The driver grips the controls. The radio operator adjusts his headset, the cord trembling slightly between his fingers. Outside, the morning mist begins to shift, parting slowly as the vibrations grow louder. Soon, the air itself seems to tremble with anticipation. Far across the marsh, a faint glimmer catches the sunlight metal moving through the haze. German panzers, 22 of them, rolling down the narrow dirt road toward Marienburg. The hunt is on. Inside the KV-1, Kolobanov exhales softly and lets his gaze linger on the periscope, view a long, winding road, flanked by swamp, silent and still. At the far bend, the perfect kill zone. His heart beats steady, calm, deliberate. He nods once to his crew. "Let them come closer," he whispers. "Let them believe this road belongs to them." And so they wait motionless in the golden light. A fortress buried in earth, ready to awaken the moment fate calls its name. The sound grows heavier now. Not loud, not yet, but dense, layered, rhythmic, like distant thunder crawling closer across the fields. Each vibration seeps through the damp soil, rising up through the treads of the KV-1, through the steel hull, through the very bones of the men waiting inside. Kolobanov opens the narrow slit of his periscope just a little wider. The world outside is wrapped in pale mist. lit by a sun too weak to burn through it. The road is nothing more than a gray ribbon that disappears into the whiteness. But within that whiteness, movement stirs dark, shifting shapes that grow larger with every passing second. He can almost count them now. 1, 2, 5, 10, a long column of panzers rolling single file, their engines coughing and growling as they crawl through the marshland. He recognizes their outlines even from this distance. Panzer III and IV models, leaner, faster, but fragile under his gun's gaze. He lowers his hand, resting it calmly on the shoulder of his gunner. "Steady," he says softly. "Not yet." Inside the tank, the air feels thick. The walls seem to breathe, exhaling slow gusts of oil and steel. The smell of machine grease and cordite lingers from the last test shot fired 2 days ago. Sweat and earth and iron mix into one heavy scent, the scent of battle before the first round is fired. The loader, Mikhail, checks the shells again, though he's already done it twice. Each one gleams dull bronze under the low light. 20 rounds, each a heartbeat waiting to be unleashed. He whispers a short prayer under his breath, not for victory, but for precision. Kolobanov glances again through the scope. Now, the enemy convoy is close enough to see their markings, black crosses on gray armor, some already streaked with mud. The panzers move with the mechanical grace of machines born for war, their treads biting into the wet road, throwing up sprays of dirt and mist. The commander of the lead vehicle stands half exposed from his hatch, binoculars raised. He scans the landscape briefly, then waves his hand forward. No suspicion, no hesitation. They are certain the path is clear. Kolobanov smiles faintly, not with arrogance, but with quiet understanding. The illusion has worked. The branches laid over their tank, the stillness of the swamp, the silence of his men, all of it woven into a single, perfect deception. He waits until the first 3 tanks pass the marked boulder, a small outcropping of stone they'd chosen days ago as the invisible boundary. Then, softly, almost like a breath, fire. The KV-1 shudders. A thunderclap tears through the morning air. The 76mm shell streaks out, slicing the mist apart. A heartbeat later, it strikes the lead panzer square in the turret. The explosion blooms like a dark flower fire, smoke and shards of metal spinning into the air. Inside, the crew moves with fluid precision. Reload. Loaded. Target 2 left. Another roar. Another flash. The second panzer jerks violently as the round punches through its armor. It skids sideways, treads screaming, before collapsing into the ditch. The road becomes chaos, vehicles halting, turning, colliding, engines snarl. Gears grind. Men shout in German, frantic, disoriented. Kolobanov's voice cuts through it all, low and calm, the only still sound in the storm. Third tank, 200 meters. Adjust elevation, 2 degrees down. Ready. Fire. The gun kicks again. Another flash. Another steel beast silenced. Smoke curls upward, thick and gray, wrapping the forest in a choking fog. Through it, the KV-1's gun continues its rhythm, slow, deliberate, patient. Each round finds its mark, each strike another verse in the silent song of destruction. For nearly half an hour, They fire, reload, and fire again. The German column breaks apart like a river against stone. Panzers crash into each other, trying to turn around, only to sink into the swampy ditch that flanks the road. The heavy machines thrash helplessly in the mud, the same mud Kolobanov had chosen weeks ago as his ally. Through the periscope, he watches them struggle, smoke curling from their engines like dying breaths. He says nothing now. There's no need. The rhythm of the fight has become a kind of music, slow, mechanical, inevitable. And then silence, the kind that follows the end of something immense. The loader lowers his hands, trembling slightly. The gunner exhales a shaky laugh, disbelieving. Outside, the battlefield is a graveyard of metal. 22 tanks reduced to burning wrecks, their heat shimmering through the morning mist. Kolobanov sits back in his chair. The steel beneath him hums with fading echoes. He listens to the sound of the engine idling steady, strong, alive. He doesn't smile. He doesn't cheer. He simply removes his glove and runs a bare hand across the wall of the turret, the cold skin of the beast that carried them through the storm. The radio crackles with faint static. Distant voices filter through, confused at first, then urgent. The command post demanding confirmation. He leans forward, presses the receiver to his lips, and speaks with quiet clarity. Enemy column destroyed, all tanks accounted for. No losses. A pause. Then static. Then faintly a voice. Understood. Well done, comrade. Kolobanov sets the receiver down. For a long moment, no one moves. Outside, the wind begins to stir again, carrying the scent of smoke and pine and victory. He looks through the periscope one last time. The road once more still and silent. The mist returns, covering everything, as if the world itself wishes to hide the scars of battle. He takes a slow breath, steady and deep. The weight of iron settles again, not on his shoulders, but in his soul. The kind of weight that never fully leaves, even after the guns have gone quiet. He closes his eyes, and for the first time in days, he allows himself to rest. The battlefield sleeps. The guns are quiet now. Only the wind remains, brushing through the shattered grass and whispering across the twisted remains of steel. Smoke rises in thin gray threads, floating upward into the pale evening sky until it fades into nothing. What was once thunder and fire has become only the faint crackle of metal cooling in the night air. Kolobanov stands outside his tank, boots half sunk in the mud. The air smells of oil, burned fuel, and wet earth, a strange heavy perfume of victory. But there's no celebration here, just silence. The kind that hums behind the ears, thick enough to feel. He looks at the road before him. Tank Alley it will be called one day. Now it is only a scar through the land, a blackened, uneven stretch lined with wrecks, their shapes broken and bent like forgotten monuments. The last light of the sun glints off a melted gun barrel, and for a moment, it looks like glass. Inside the KV-1, the men move quietly. No shouts, no laughter, only soft voices. The click of empty shell casings being gathered, the creak of armor plates cooling. The tank itself seems to breathe. Faint metallic pops echo from its frame as the heat fades. Kolobanov climbs back inside. the familiar smell wrapping around him again. The steel walls reflect the faint glow of the fading sunset, painting everything in gold and rust. His gunner, Usov, sits by the cannon, staring at it as if it were something alive. He runs a hand along the barrel and whispers, almost reverently, "She did not miss." The commander nods, then quietly replies, "No, she didn't." Mikhail, the loader, leans back against the hull, rubbing his tired hands together. His gloves are torn, his knuckles raw from the endless reloads. He stares at the floor, at the empty shells piled like bones. 43 tanks, he murmurs, almost to himself. 43. And we are still here. The words hang in the air, not boastful, not proud, just true. Outside, a light rain begins to fall, slow, soft, the kind that doesn't cleanse so much as remind. The drops tap gently against the hull, a rhythm that almost sounds like music. Each tap echoes faintly in the confined space, soothing in its repetition. Kolobanov closes his eyes. The rhythm continues, steady, calm, a heartbeat in steel. He thinks of home, of the quiet fields near Minsk, of his mother's hands washing potatoes in cold water, of the hum of the samovar in the mornings. He wonders if the same rain is falling there now, if someone is listening to it just as he is. In that thought, the world softens. The war, the fire, the smoke, all of it fades for a moment. What remains is only sound and breath, and the slow pulse of the earth turning beneath them. The men drift into quiet conversation, not about death, or glory, or what comes next. They speak about bread, about tobacco, about the way the stars look tonight, brighter somehow, as if the sky itself is grateful for the stillness. The radio crackles faintly, a voice trying to reach them through the static. They ignore it. They've done their part. The rest of the world can wait until morning. Outside, the forest begins to glow faintly blue under the light of the rising moon. The tanks, both living and dead, are outlined in silver, like ghosts standing guard over the field. The swamp beyond shimmers quietly, reflecting every star above. The night has claimed the land again. Kolobanov opens the hatch once more and climbs halfway out. The air is cold and wet, brushing against his face like a whisper. He takes a deep breath, slow and full. For the first time in weeks, he tastes peace. He looks up at the moon, and in the faint reflection of his periscope glass, he sees his own eyes staring back, older somehow, though only a few hours have passed. He blinks once, and the reflection fades. The sound of the rain merges with the hum of the engine still cooling, creating a low, soft drone that fills the night air. Somewhere in that vibration, he feels something deeper, almost musical, a frequency that seems to move through his chest, calming his heartbeat, loosening the tightness in his breath. He closes his eyes again, resting his head against the turret. The rhythm continues, steady and low. The KV-1 hums gently, as if it, too, were falling asleep. Minutes blur into hours. The fire in the wreckage dies down. The smoke clears. The stars grow sharper, colder, endless. And beneath them 5 men, a tank, a patch of scorched earth, and a silence so deep it feels like mercy. the kind of silence that comes after the storm, the kind that holds everything: loss, victory, exhaustion, and peace all at once. Kolobanov breathes out slowly. His eyes grow heavy, and as sleep takes him, it's not the sound of battle he hears anymore, but the quiet rhythm of rain and the soft hum of steel cradling him in its arms. The dawn arrives slowly, like a secret that doesn't wish to be told. It creeps over the horizon in shades of gray and silver, brushing the edges of the clouds until they begin to glow. The rain has stopped, leaving behind a thin mist that hangs low over the ground. The air is heavy and cool, and everything smells of earth, damp, real, alive. Inside the KV-1, a thin line of light filters through the hatch. It paints soft gold across the faces of the sleeping crew. Their breathing is slow, deep, and steady. The sound is almost rhythmic, a gentle rise and fall that matches the distant hum of the waking forest. The war, for a moment, feels impossibly far away. Kolobanov opens his eyes. For a few seconds, he doesn't move. He listens to the stillness, to the quiet drip of rainwater from the armor, to the faint rustle of wind through the trees. It feels like the earth is exhaling, releasing, letting go. He climbs out of the tank, careful not to wake the others. The metal is cool under his palms, and a thin film of dew coats the turret. He looks across the field. The once burning road is now calm, shrouded in mist, its horrors softened by the light of morning. The wrecks are still there, dark silhouettes against the white fog, but they look smaller now, almost harmless, like ghosts fading into the past. The sun begins to rise, pushing pale rays through the mist. Each beam catches the water droplets on the grass, turning the ground into a sea of diamonds. Kolobanov watches it in silence. For the first time in weeks, he feels warmth on his skin that isn't from fire, a warmth that feels gentle. He takes a deep breath. The air is crisp, filled with the scent of pine, soil, and metal. Each breath feels like a cleansing, washing away the dust and fear that's lived inside his chest for too long. He exhales slowly. The mist dances with the sound. Behind him, one by one, the others stir. The gunner stretches. The loader rubs his eyes. Their voices are low, rough with sleep. No one says much. There's no need. Words would only disturb the fragile peace that has settled here. Kizilkov, the radio operator, steps outside and tilts his head back to the sky. He smiles faintly. "Look," he says softly. "No smoke today." Said. Kolobanov glances up too. The sky is clear, pale blue, with thin streaks of cloud drifting like brushstrokes. No engines, no fire, just sky. They sit together on the armor of the tank, silent and still. Steam rises from their breath. Somewhere far away, a bird begins to sing a simple, looping melody that feels almost too fragile for this place. But it's there, alive, beautiful. For a long while they say nothing. They simply exist, 5 men, a tank, and a morning that feels like forgiveness. Kolobanov reaches into his pocket and pulls out a small, crumpled photograph. It's old, its corners soft from handling. A woman, a boy, a home far away. He studies it quietly, tracing the faces with his thumb. He doesn't smile. He just breathes. The sound of the forest deepens. A low hum of insects, the rustle of distant leaves, the whisper of wind through wet grass. The earth is awake again, and beneath the surface, something larger stirs a rhythm that feels ancient, eternal. The pulse of life returning, slow and patient. Kolobanov closes his eyes, letting the sound fill him. There's a frequency to it, subtle but clear, a hum that seems to vibrate through the bones, steady and warm. It's the same tone that's carried in the music of peace, in the songs of rest, in the quiet that follows chaos. It's the sound of balance, of stillness rediscovered. The men share a small meal, bread gone hard, a few sips of water, but it feels enough. The act itself, the sharing, the quiet laughter between bites, feels like an offering to the morning. No one talks about yesterday. No one mentions what comes next. The present moment is enough. As the mist thins, the land reveals itself again, the long road stretching endlessly east and west, the distant outline of a forest, the curve of a small river catching light. Everything glows faintly golden now. The world looks fragile and whole at once. Kolobanov places his hand on the side of the KV-1, the cold steel beneath his fingers. He whispers, "Rest now." The words are soft, meant as much for the tank as for himself. The sound of the wind rises, carrying with it the faint echo of his voice, scattering it across the fields, letting it dissolve into the morning air. The day has begun, and though the war will return, though the noise and fire will come again, in this moment there is peace, a stillness that hums beneath the skin, a quiet reminder that even amidst destruction, beauty endures. The sun climbs higher, the light grows warmer, the mist fades completely, leaving behind only shimmering air and the smell of wet grass. Kolobanov takes one last look around, then climbs back into the tank. The engine coughs once, twice, then starts with a slow, familiar rumble. The sound blends with the music of the morning, deep, calm, resonant, a vibration that seems to move through everything, the ground, the air, their hearts. And as they begin to roll forward, leaving behind Tank Alley and its ghosts, that sound stays with them, low, endless, peaceful, like the world itself, whispering, "Breathe." The day unfolds slowly, as if time itself has grown weary of rushing. The mist has lifted, but the world still moves in hushed tones. The trees stand tall, their branches heavy with the weight of the past night's rain. A pale sun filters through the canopy, laying threads of gold across the wet earth. Each beam of light trembles slightly, as though it too is waking from a dream. Inside the KV-1, the air hums with quiet mechanical life. The low vibration of the idling engine is steady, deep and resonant, like a slow heartbeat. It travels through the metal, through the floor, through their boots, and into their bones. It feels grounding, reassuring, a reminder that they are still here. Kolobanov sits in the commander's seat, his gloved hands resting calmly on his knees. His eyes move between the dials and the faint light spilling through the periscope. He says nothing. There is no need. The crew knows what comes next. Movement. The tank begins to roll forward, treads crunching softly over the wet ground. The motion is slow, deliberate, Every sound is muffled by the weight of the mist that still lingers close to the soil. The rumble of the engine becomes part of the landscape, blending with the wind, the distant croak of frogs, the faint call of birds. The world seems to breathe in unison with the tank. They pass through what was once the battlefield. Smoke no longer rises here, but the scent of burnt metal and soil still lingers faint, like an old memory refusing to fade. The twisted silhouettes of destroyed panzers rest quietly along the road. Their edges are softened by mud, grass already beginning to grow through the cracks. Nature, indifferent and eternal, is reclaiming what was taken. Kiselkov, at the radio, hums faintly under his breath, not a song, not even a melody, but a rhythm that fits the movement of the tank. The others listen in silence. It's not cheerful, but it's not sorrowful either. It's steady, human, alive. Usov, the gunner, stares through the scope even though there's nothing to aim at. The glass is clean now, replaced after the last battle. He watches the distant tree line, eyes unfocused. For the first time in months, he's not looking for an enemy. He's simply watching. Kolobanov speaks softly. Let it be quiet, for now. And everyone understands. The silence that follows is thick, almost sacred. Only the sound of the treads and the low hum of the motor remain a mantra in motion. As they drive, the landscape changes. Forests give way to open plains, and the plains stretch endlessly toward a pale horizon. The light grows warmer, the clouds thin, and somewhere deep inside, each man feels something loosen, something unclench, like a fist slowly opening. The music that plays through the world now, the soft hum of the tank, the wind slipping through cracks in the armor, the distant call of life becomes a symphony of rest. A sound designed by the earth itself to calm the heart and steady the breath. If one listens closely, it carries a frequency, a gentle vibration that resonates not in the ears but in the chest. It's the same tone that lulls the nervous system, that softens the edges of thought, that allows the body to drift closer to stillness. Every vibration feels intentional, like a heartbeat in perfect sync with the universe. They move for hours, yet time feels unmeasured. The sunlight shifts slowly, from silver to gold to amber. Shadows lengthen, stretching lazily across the ground. At one point, the crew pauses by a stream. The engine stops, and the silence is immense. It fills every corner of the forest, spreading outward like water from a well. Kolobanov steps out and kneels by the water. He scoops some into his hand, watches it glimmer for a moment, then lets it fall through his fingers. The current catches it gently, carrying it away. He thinks of how every drop will someday join the sea, no matter how far away it is, and he smiles. A small, private smile. Usov joins him. He sits down beside the tank, leaning his back against the steel. The metal is still warm from the Sunday. He closes his eyes and listens not to the war, not to his thoughts, but to the quiet rhythm beneath everything. The kind of quiet that only comes after great noise. The kind that asks nothing of you. The kind that says, "You've done enough." Kolobanov lowers himself onto the grass. He lies back, staring at the moving clouds. His breath slows, matching the steady rise and fall of the wind. For a moment, he feels weightless. The tank behind him, the world before him, all dissolve into a single pulse of peace. Kisilkov tunes the radio, not to find messages, but to listen. The static crackles softly, blending with the hum of the earth. He adjusts the frequency until it produces a faint, gentle tone, almost musical. The others look over, and he smiles faintly. "It's just the air," he murmurs. But they all know it feels like something more. The frequency hums low and constant, a sound that fills the space around them, wrapping their tired minds in invisible warmth. It seems to vibrate inside the bones, slow and steady, easing the weight they've carried for too long. Kolobanov closes his eyes. He can feel the vibrations sink deeper into his muscles, his breath, his thoughts. It's as if the earth itself is whispering, "Rest." Minutes stretch into hours. The sun begins to dip, staining the horizon in soft orange light. The water beside them catches the glow and reflects it back, shimmering like liquid fire. Everything feels suspended. The light, the air, the sound, their hearts. There's no past or future here. Only this breath, this sound, this peace. The men stay like that, unmoving, half asleep, half awake. When Kolobanov finally speaks again, his voice is barely above a whisper. "Let's keep going," he says, though none of them are sure if he means with the mission or with life itself. The engine starts again. The familiar vibration returns, but now it feels different, softer, almost alive. It hums in harmony with the lingering tone from the radio. Together they create something whole, something balanced. The rhythm of motion and the frequency of calm, the sound of continuing. As night begins to fall, the KV-1 rolls gently across the open plain. The stars start to appear one by one, scattered like faint embers across the darkening sky. The moon rises low, its reflection rippling faintly on the stream beside them. The men inside the tank are quiet. No one thinks of battle. No one thinks of tomorrow. They are simply moving. And somewhere deep inside the sound, beneath the engine's hum and the whispering wind, there is a pulse. A slow, ancient rhythm that matches the steady breathing of men who have survived. It hums through the night, through the earth, through the stars. It is the frequency of peace, the kind that doesn't erase the scars, but wraps them gently in light. The KV-1 continues on, glowing faintly in the moonlight. The road ahead is long, but for now, every sound, every vibration, every breath feels like part of a single song. A song of stillness in motion. A song of men returning not to battle, but to themselves. Night had come softly, not like a curtain falling, but like a tide rising, patient, inevitable, and kind. The horizon glowed faintly with the last breath of the sun, then faded into deep indigo. A crescent moon floated low over the endless plains, painting silver threads across the damp grass. The air smelled of earth and rain, and somewhere far off, an owl called once, then fell silent. The KV-1 moved slowly through the night. Its lights were off. The engine's hum was low, a heartbeat in the dark. Each vibration seemed gentler now, as if even the machine understood that the war behind them was beginning to fade. The sound no longer carried tension or fear. It carried memory, weight, and something close to peace. Inside, the crew spoke little. They didn't need words. They shared the same silence, the kind that exists only between those who have crossed fire together and survived. Every breath, every glance, every sound of shifting metal said enough. Kolobanov leaned against the turret wall, eyes half closed. The dim light from the dashboard flickered across his face. His mind wandered not to battle, not to glory, but to the small things he hadn't thought of in years. The smell of birch smoke in the morning, the sound of his mother's voice calling him in from the field, the feeling of soil beneath his bare feet. Outside, the wind brushed gently over the plains, whispering through tall grass like a song with no words. The stars stretched endlessly above, bright, unbroken, eternal. For the first time in a long while, he let himself look up at them. And for the first time in even longer, he didn't feel small. He felt part of something, something vast and alive and still forgiving. The tank rolled on. The road beneath it was uneven, but the movement was steady, hypnotic. It was the rhythm of continuation, the world reminding them that even after everything, life still moves forward. Every turn of the treads, every hum of the motor, every breath drawn in and released became part of that rhythm. Kiselkov tuned the radio again, not searching, not calling, just listening. The static filled the cabin like soft rain, and within the noise, a tone began to form. Barely audible at first, then warmer, smoother, a low, pulsing frequency. It resonated gently in the chest, deep enough to feel rather than hear. The tone blended perfectly with the sound of the engine, the whisper of the wind, the beating of their hearts, a harmony of machine and man and earth. This sound, Kiselkov murmured. He smiled faintly. It feels alive. Usov closed his eyes. He could feel it too, the frequency, slow and warm, wrapping around his mind like a soft blanket. It carried no words, only calm, a vibration designed by something ancient, something that understood that healing is not loud but patient. He felt it in his bones, in the ache behind his eyes, in the tired weight of his chest. It was as if the earth itself was breathing with them, saying, "Rest now, you've done enough." The sound deepened, merging with the low hum of the tank until the two were indistinguishable. It wasn't just sound anymore, it was space, texture, motion. Every molecule seemed to move in rhythm with it. The inside of the tank glowed faintly from the moonlight, leaking through the vision slits, painting soft lines across steel and skin. Everything shimmered with quiet life. Kolobanov whispered, almost to himself, "Listen carefully. This is what peace sounds like." The others didn't answer. They didn't need to. The sound filled everything. Their thoughts softened, slowed, then began to drift not away from the world, but deeper into it. Each breath became longer, smoother, quieter. The line between waking and dreaming began to dissolve. They drove on. The road wound through empty fields and broken villages, through places where life was already returning grass, pushing through cracks in stone, birds nesting in the ruins of barns, trees reclaiming old trenches. The land itself was healing, and in its rhythm, the men found their own reflection. Wounds mending slowly, scars fading beneath new skin. Hours passed, though none of them noticed. The stars wheeled overhead. The moon climbed higher, silver and perfect. The night grew cooler. Every now and then, Kolobanov reached for the throttle, not to go faster, but to feel the hum through his hand. It reminded him of a heartbeat, steady, living, constant, the same pulse that carried them all this far. At one point, they stopped by a small lake. The water was smooth, reflecting the stars like a field of glass. The men climbed out quietly, as if stepping into a sacred place. The air was cool and still. Each sound, the creak of the hatch, the soft crunch of boots on wet grass, seemed amplified, slow, deliberate. Kolobanov crouched by the water's edge. He cupped a handful, watched it glimmer in his palm. The reflection of the moon trembled across it, then broke apart as he let it fall. Ripples spread across the surface, distorting the stars for a moment, before settling back into stillness. "This is what remains," he said softly. "Not the battle, not the noise, just this." He gestured at the water, the stars, the quiet, peace. Finally, no one replied. They simply stood there, listening to the world breathe. The frequency from the radio still played faintly through the open hatch, low, constant, tender. It mixed with the sounds of the night, the lapping water, the distant rustle of grass. Together, they formed a single sound, the frequency of rest. The men sat down near the lake. No words, no thoughts, only the steady pulse of life returning. The tension in their shoulders eased. Their breaths deepened. One by one, their eyes began to close. The music of the earth, that low, healing tone, continued to hum softly around them. It was neither song nor silence, but something in between. As they drifted, Kolobanov felt a strange lightness. He wasn't leaving anything behind. He was simply allowing it to settle. The war, the noise, the fear, all of it was sinking gently into the soil, dissolving like morning mist. He felt his heartbeat slow, his breath align with the rhythm of the earth. The vibration in the air matched the pulse in his chest, perfect harmony between man and world. Time blurred. The stars turned slowly. A faint glow appeared on the far horizon, not the harsh orange of fire, but the soft blue of approaching dawn. The world was turning again, and with it, life. Kolobanov opened his eyes just as the first light touched the surface of the lake. He watched it stretch and shimmer across the water, catching the faces of his crew still resting peacefully beside him. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to truly exhale. He whispered, "We made it home." The words were simple, but they carried everything. All the nights, all the miles, all the breaths they'd survived. Home was not a place. It was this moment, this peace, this stillness. Behind them, the KV-1 rested quietly, its steel hull glowing faintly in the rising light. It no longer looked like a weapon, it looked like a monument, a vessel that had carried souls through darkness into morning. The radio tone continued, gentle as a heartbeat, until it slowly faded into silence. The men didn't move. They didn't need to. They had reached the end of the road not by distance, but by understanding. The long road home was never measured in miles. It was measured in the space between breaths. In the moment when chaos became calm, when sound became silence, when war became rest, the dawn spread wider. Mist rose from the grass, curling around the tank like a final blessing. The lake shimmered gold, and the first birds began to sing soft, hesitant notes of life beginning again. Kolobanov listened. Each sound was fragile, but real. Each note carried hope. He closed his eyes one last time, letting the sound, the light, and the warmth of the rising sun wash over him. The world breathed in, and he breathed out, perfectly in sync. And then, nothing but peace. The gentle hum of a frequency that now lived inside them, all body, mind, and soul aligned. The sound of stillness, the sound of home. The KV-1 rested at the edge of the forest, wrapped in shadows. The night around it felt endless, a dark ocean of sound and silence. Rain had begun to fall, not harshly, but in long, slow drops that tapped against the metal hull like distant memories. Every tap echoed inside, soft and hollow, like time itself was whispering. Kolobanov sat by the periscope, his breath fogging the glass. He no longer looked for enemies. He simply watched the patterns of water weaving down the slit, tracing paths like veins. Every droplet shimmered with faint reflections of lightning, faraway flashes of white that illuminated the sky for a heartbeat, then vanished. The others slept in fragments, short, uneasy dreams between the sighs of the rain. Usov's hand still rested on the gun controls, as if even in sleep he was waiting for the next command. Kiselkov mumbled something in his half-dream, something about home, about the river that ran through his childhood village. Each word dissolved into the hum of the storm. Outside, thunder rolled softly over the plains. It wasn't the sound of war this time. It was natural, cleansing. Each rumble blended with the deep undertone of the earth itself. A low frequency, steady and grounding, that resonated with the same rhythm as the tank's heart. Kolobanov reached for the radio and tuned the dial slightly. The static thickened, then opened into a deep, droning hum, 432 hertzes, a tone so pure it seemed to vibrate through the bones. It filled the cabin like fog, seeping into every breath. He closed his eyes and felt it travel through him, washing the tension out of his chest, smoothing the edges of thought. The rain, the thunder, the hum, they began to align. Nature and machine, heartbeat and storm. For the first time, everything felt in sync. The tank was no longer a cage. It was a vessel of sound and stillness. And within that stillness, they all began to drift, not asleep, not awake, but somewhere between. Morning came slow and silver. Mist hung between the trees like ghostly silk, catching the first rays of dawn and breaking them into soft halos. The forest was alive, yet silent, every sound muffled by dew, every shadow breathing gently. The KV-1 moved carefully through the narrow path, its treads pressing softly into the damp soil. Birds stirred above, wings fluttering in the branches, but no alarm sounded. It was as if the forest recognized the machine, not as an intruder, but as something old and weary, part of the same history carved into its roots. Kolobanov watched the world pass slowly through the slit of the viewport. Ferns, birch trunks, moss-covered stones, all bathed in silver light. Every now and then, he could see traces of the old war. A rusted helmet, half buried in the mud. A twisted rifle, leaning against a fallen tree. Nature had already begun its quiet work of erasing, of forgiving. The frequency still played, now softer 528 hertzes, the tone of healing. It merged perfectly with the sounds of the forest. The drip of dew, the whisper of leaves, the distant call of a cuckoo. Each tone seemed to mend something invisible, not only in the world around them, but within them too. They stopped near a clearing where sunlight spilled like gold onto the earth. For the first time in days, the men climbed out fully, letting the air touch their faces. The silence wasn't empty, it was alive, dense, almost sacred. Kolobanov placed a hand on the cold steel of the KV-1 and said quietly, "Even iron remembers." Usov looked at him. "What do you mean?" Kolobanov smiled faintly. "It's all connected, the metal, the earth, the sound, even us." He pressed his palm flat against the hull. "Everything holds a memory, but memory doesn't have to hurt. It can heal too." The breeze moved gently through the clearing, bending the tall grass. And for a brief moment, it felt like the entire forest breathed in sync with them, a single unified rhythm. By the time the next night fell, the horizon glowed again, not from gunfire this time, but from lightning. Storm clouds gathered over the far fields, huge and silent, their bellies flickering with light. The KV-1 stood on high ground, watching. Kolobanov sat alone on the turret. He could feel the static in the air, the electric pulse dancing on his skin. He listened not to voices or orders, but to the low vibrating sound beneath everything. It was as if the earth was speaking in frequency. 396 hertzes, the frequency of letting go. The tone came not from the radio this time, but from the storm itself. Every flash carried a pulse that hummed in the bones. Ancient and alive, each vibration felt like release energy, rising, transforming, dissolving. He closed his eyes. Images flickered through his mind. The endless road, the faces of his crew, the flames of battle, the silence that came after. And beneath it all, that hum, steady, cleansing, real. The rain began again, harder this time, hammering against the steel. The sound built into a slow, natural rhythm, deep, immersive, hypnotic. He didn't flinch. He let it happen. Every drop that struck the metal felt like a heartbeat, washing the past away. Inside the tank, the others slept through the storm, protected by the very thing that once brought them chaos. Now it was their shield of peace, their sanctuary of sound. The thunder rolled, the frequencies deepened, and slowly, the storm turned from fury to lullaby. The morning is soft, almost weightless. A veil of mist drifts over the open plain, folding around the KV-1 like breath over still water. The first light of dawn does not strike, it glides. Golden and gentle, it washes across the tank's armor, tracing the scars, the dents, the signs of all that has passed. Each mark tells a story. Each shadow hums with memory. But this morning, none of it feels heavy. It feels complete. Kolobanov stands beside the great machine, his boots sinking slightly into the damp soil. The ground is still warm from the night's storm, steaming faintly where the sun touches it. He breathes in, slow and deep, feeling the cool air fill his chest. The scent of pine, wet metal, and wildflowers mixes into something pure and quiet, the scent of life returning. Behind him, the rest of the crew stirs awake. Usov climbs out of the turret, blinking at the light, his hands black with soot and oil. Kiselkov follows, holding the radio receiver close to his chest, as if afraid to disturb the peace. None of them speak. They don't need to. The silence itself has a language now calm, infinite, and clear. Somewhere far away, a lark begins to sing. Its song is simple, fragile, but it fills the entire horizon. Each note seems to ripple through the air like soft waves. It blends with the hum of the radio, a low tone at 639 hertzes, the frequency of harmony, love, and connection. The sound isn't just heard, it's felt. It vibrates in the bones, in the chest, in the space between thoughts. Kolobanov sets his mug of tea on the tank's fender. Steam rises from it in delicate spirals, merging with the mist. He looks out over the wide fields below. Everything shimmers. The dew catches the light and turns to silver dust. A fox moves quietly at the tree line. The river glints far in the distance, winding through the land like a thin ribbon of glass. He thinks of the men who didn't see this morning, the faces lost in smoke and fire. He thinks of the noise that once filled this same air engines, gunfire, shouting, the endless roar of chaos. And now, nothing. Only the slow rhythm of nature breathing again. He lets the thought dissolve, like mist under sunlight. The radio crackles faintly, not words, just sound. The tone deepens into 741 hertzes, the frequency of awakening. It resonates through the hull, through the earth, through him. He feels lighter, almost transparent, as if his body itself is beginning to dissolve into the morning. He closes his eyes. For a long moment, there is no tank, no uniform, no war. There is only the pulse of the world, steady, vast, ancient. The ground hums softly beneath his feet. The wind sighs through the grass, brushing his face like a hand. The light rests on his eyelids, warm and gold. Then, footsteps. Usov and Kiselkov join him, standing quietly on either side. They too watch the horizon, three figures against the rising sun, silent sentinels of a fading age. No medals, no speeches, no triumph, just peace. And peace, they realize, is heavier and more beautiful than victory. Kolobanov finally speaks, his voice barely above a whisper. "Listen," he says. The others do. At first, they hear only the faint rustle of wind and grass. But then, beneath it, something else, a deeper resonance, like the earth itself is singing. It's faint, but steady, a heartbeat, a rhythm that matches their own. The camera would move slowly here, rising behind them, lifting into the morning light. The KV-1 grows smaller, the men turning to silhouettes against the Sunday. The landscape stretches endlessly in all directions, fields, rivers, forests, until the horizon becomes nothing but light. The frequency shifts once more, 963 hertzes, the tone of unity and transcendence. The world seems to hum in pure harmony. It's not music, not sound, it's existence.